Hey, welcome to The Green Room. That is a new podcast from 614 Media, keeping up with cannabis and culture here in the state of Ohio. And joining me today, Bjorn.
Hi, I'm Bjorn Anderson, and I'm hanging out today, just joining in with the fun. I like weed, so.
That's great. Yeah. I also like weed.
That's why we're here.
What a good place for us to start. So I think part of the reason that this podcast came into existence is because in November, the state of Ohio and the voters of the state of Ohio legalized marijuana for recreational consumption.
I know.
Do you remember where you were? Did you vote for issue 2 in November?
I think I had my early access bid in because I hate going to the polls.
Fair.
Yeah, I do remember I was at work and somebody just came back in from break. They loaded up their phone and they were like, guys, guess what?
It's a big day.
Weed stores, they're coming. It's legal now. And then, of course, the first question is, well, how long?
Yeah, right,
It's
exactly.
like, when can I go into the weed store?
It'll be a minute, but hopefully sooner rather than later. It's kind of been this whole process, right? So it was legalized in November for adults to have up to 2.5 ounces of flower and up to I didn't write the number down, but it's like a gram or something of concentrate. No, it's legal for adults to have 2.5 ounces of cannabis. You can grow 6 plants per person, up to 12 plants per household, but there's no legal way to buy cannabis in the state of Ohio recreationally yet.
It's here.
Yeah, I know, just a little one, right? But the good news is that as of, I think it was June 7th, the Department of Cannabis Control started accepting applications, and I think they've given out something like 60-ish dual licenses to existing dispensaries and production facilities.
And that's for medical and recreational.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And there's a number in there for just single recreational dispensaries as well, but I don't remember exactly what it is. But the even better news is that as of last week, second week of July, they gave 10 go-aheads, big old thumbs up, to production and processing companies, because even when these medical dispensaries get approved to sell rec marijuana, they have to have recreational cannabis that has been grown and basically certified, approved by the state of Ohio to be sold.
I didn't even know that they would require a difference in growing between the two. That's interesting. That's something I didn't even think about, is from the growing side of things, how that would even be implemented.
Right, and it's different. I think there's certainly a hope that there will be differences in dosage quality and differences in potency and more of a selection, especially because medical marijuana tends to be a little heavier hitting than your recreational cannabis. So
right.
I think that a lot of that recreational production is to produce things that are a little bit less potent, don't hit quite as hard, and give people a more accessible on-ramp to recreational cannabis. So yeah, hopefully in the next week to 3 weeks to 6 months, who knows, somewhere soon you'll be able to legally buy weed in Ohio, recreationally.
I'm excited for that day. I remember back in the beginning, around that time, there was the September month was always floating around, with when you'll be able to jump into, whatever dispensary that you want or whatever. But I don't know. I feel you got the facts. You were sharing them and stuff like that. But I feel like there's just still this weird sense of unanswers. When is it gonna come?
Yeah.
I feel like Mr. Weed Wizard is just chilling ominously in
Hanging
the
out.
sky. Like, he's like, I'm coming. Just wait. You're not going to know when, but I'll be there.
And it's weird too. I was reading this afternoon. It's not like there's going to be one day where suddenly you can get it anywhere. It's going to be dispensary to dispensary to dispensary. Everybody's going to have their own day. Like, they've been approved, they've been certified. Now you can go to this dispensary starting on this day. But that doesn't mean you can go to another dispensary across town and buy rec weed. So it's not even like there's a finish line or a deadline that we're looking for. That September date was the last possible date for the Department of Cannabis Control to like get the ball rolling.
Okay.
But they did that ahead of the line. That's what started in June. So now we're just waiting for the infrastructure basically to get built up.
Okay. I feel like that's a lot better then. I feel like I can have hope.
Yeah.
Mr. Weed Wizard in the sky.
He do be coming. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. So I want to talk about getting started with cannabis since I think with the dawn of the rec market in Ohio, it's going to be new for folks. And I think that there are a lot of easy ways to start consuming cannabis and also a lot of easy ways to start consuming cannabis the wrong way. And I want to start with giving people some advice on how to start.
Absolutely.
So, tell me, where do you think is a good place for people to start their journey consuming cannabis?
I feel like I'm fairly new to smoking overall. I've probably only really been smoking for probably about 4 or 5 years now. I had like a medical thing and that kind of like is what like kicked it off. So there are things that I myself am still discovering about like the best way to smoke. I really kind of care about my lungs a little bit, so I try to stay away from anything with papers.
Sure.
Although there is just something about the ease of access of having a cigarette or cigar type, smoking device that you can just light up whenever you want. Personally, though, I'm always a fan of glass. Yeah. It's easy. It's, easy to clean. It's nicer. I feel like you get like, this is my little buddy and this is my little smoking buddy and he's my friend. That sort of thing. I also feel like smoking with like a glass bowl, to start is a good way to start learning and picking up on like the social cues of like smoking when you're with other people, because that's something I feel like I'm still like teaching my friends. How do you smoke when you're by yourself versus how you smoke when you're hanging out with your friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's where I like to start. And then personally, I went from that to a bong. I love it. That's my favorite. That's my preferred method of smoking.
Yeah,
I love it. But I'm also like a little bit of a science geek, and I like the science of like how smoking with a water pipe works. Not only with like cannabis, but also like hookah and other stuff like that.
For sure, I think that's cool. And I think just to be clear for folks who might not be aware, so smoking either with a glass pipe or with a bong, you're consuming cannabis flower.
Yeah.
So
it's a good point, I guess. Yeah, that definitely should be mentioned.
No, I mean, I think it's easy, even if you've been smoking for like 3 or 4 years, to forget how intimidating it is, like right off the jump, right? And like, do I do flower? Like, somebody just handed me a vape. This chocolate bar tastes really good. Like, where am I supposed to go? I'm also a big flower fan. I'm also a big glass pipe fan. I think it's a better way to go on your own journey, if you will. It's a more gradual experience. It doesn't jump right off the bat or, hit you 2 hours later or anything like that. And you can kind of feel yourself going. I want to go back to that etiquette piece because I think that's really interesting. So talk to me then, if you've got I don't know, somebody who's new to smoking or has been invited into a smoke sesh for the first time, what's some advice that you have for that person?
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like a big thing, and I feel like honestly, until recently, I didn't really like kind of click together, like even the smoking etiquette between like a blunt versus like a glass piece. Like we all hear like puff, puff, pass,
Yeah.
but that doesn't apply to glass.
You're right.
Because if you puff, puff, pass in glass, that's like, you just took somebody's head. I gotta repack it like now somewhere sooner, and you know. But with a blunt, it's definitely like puff, puff. Then you pass to the next person. Then it's puff, puff, and then pass it around. You know. But with glass, it's more. I feel it's all about the consistency of like the hit, right?
Yeah.
You don't start in the middle.
Right.
You know, because then everybody else is getting like crap hits, you know, it might all fall into the funnel at that point. So you always, I personally try and do almost like cycles of the moon is like the way that I think about it. So I try and get that nice crescent shape at the end and then start to fill a little bit more, and then right in the middle is my middle burn, and then I go at the end and then I cap it off with like that nice little tiny bit of crescentness. So that's personally how I like to do it. People go all around 360 and then save like the middle for like the last person, just as long as you're definitely not starting in the middle. Nobody likes that the person that just immediately gets the fresh greens, goes right in the middle, and then everybody's like, all right, well that's like
there we
two.
go.
Yeah, it's like, all right, cool. It's gonna be a rough one, I guess.
Yeah, I like that. All right, let me try this one on for size with you, because this is something I think when I first started smoking that I came to really enjoy. I smoked for the first time in college. Had some negative experiences with drinking, and so was really nervous about like getting into a smoke session and feeling really pressured. And I've always liked that there is a real etiquette in any smoke session, no matter how hard people are going, that like if somebody passes you something and you're like, I need a minute, it's cool. You can always take a break. You can always back out a little bit, and you can always say, hey, hold on, like pass me, give me the next round.
I almost have never been in a situation, even like before I smoked, where I've been around people who are smoking, you know, around me, and they like are offended that I don't, you know, which is something that I feel like is kind of unique, you know, to cannabis culture itself, is the now, of course, the Dare commercials will tell you otherwise, but you know, it's not pressured. It's, you know, it's like, hey, no worries, we'll come back around if you want it again, you know, it'll be there for you. But like if you know you don't, you're chill. That's cool. It's like doesn't hinder conversation like at all, you know. Versus like if you're at a party and like everybody's handing out drinks, you know, and you're like, it's like, nah, I'm good. It's like, dude, this is my party. Like, come on, like, let's go.
You got a party. You got to get in this.
You know, that's honestly, it's one of the reasons why I'm definitely more of like a smoker than anything else, is just that social environment I feel like is definitely a lot more welcoming than other environments like relative to the same thing.
Yeah, 100%. So that's advice for. I want to do advice against, because something that I feel like I encounter all the time, people who are new smokers or people who have only experienced cannabis once or twice or are trying to experience cannabis for the first time, are like, well, I'm going to go out and get an edible and I'm just going to go for it. And I feel like there might not be a worse place to start for your very first time than with an edible. Bjorn, your thoughts?
100% agree. Now, I've worked in like the restaurant industry and the back of house industry for like almost a decade. So I'm very familiar with, you know, recipes and, you know, knowing how to get that consistent, you know, flavor profile and taste and nutrition and stuff like that. Edibles, man, that's a Wild West. It's the Wild West out there. It's like, you know, I've taken like the same brand edibles that are supposed to be the same amount of grams, and I'll take the same amount and it'll hit me differently, you know? And I feel like the unknown of an edible is probably the worst part, especially if you've never smoked before. You know, if you don't know exactly what you're getting into, or if you're doing it alone and you don't have a buddy to like walk you through it, it can definitely be very anxiety inducing, right? I mean, we've all had those times where you're like, oh boy,
I might be dying. I might be the first person to die from weed.
Right, but that's why we're here, you know, to kind of stop those things. But I definitely would advise against starting with an edible. There's just so many stories of, I was supposed to take like a quarter of the amount that I did, and then like 30 minutes to 2 hours later, you're just like done,
fried out of your mind,
you know. And it's so different, varied, because like even if you do have a buddy that you take it with, what do you do if it hits them 30 minutes in and you're like, you know, an hour and then it hits you? You know, it's totally off. I definitely would start with an edible once you maybe have discovered weed a little bit more. Maybe if you've tried smoking flower or vaping and you realize that you like it being high, but you don't like smoking itself, you know, that's when I would start to experience or experiment with that. But yeah, definitely I would stay away for the beginning.
Yeah. And I think the reason for that too, that people might not realize, is that edibles hit the body much differently. It's a different consumption method, and it takes a lot longer. So there's that classic story of like, well, I took an edible and then I waited half an hour, and so I didn't feel anything, and I ate the rest of the plate of brownies. And it's 3 hours later, and I'm in the ER, and I don't know what happened. Like, it takes time for those to hit, and I think that that's really anxiety inducing for somebody who isn't accustomed to that journey.
I feel like we definitely should say, though, if you've eaten an edible and it hasn't hit you yet, please don't take more. Wait.
Don't.
Wait. Let it hit you, then decide if you want more.
Yeah, if always, like 2 hours, maybe 3 hours.
Then yeah. But don't. That's rookie mistake number one. Is don't take more before it's hit you.
Absolutely. So then that leaves us kind of, I think, with the last really common thing being cartridges.
Yeah.
So the modern vape pen, the Benjamin, the Pennifer Aniston, if you will.
I've never heard either of those two nicknames, and it's changed my life.
They're yours now, you know, free. So I mean, I'm a pen fan, as are plenty of people. Not as much as I like flower, but that's like that's so much and so little, right?
Yeah.
You know, if you are in a group and you're smoking a bowl or you're smoking a joint and everybody's taking a couple of hits, that's different than like a couple of hits off a pen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's the last, I think, common consumption method for a new smoker. And again, something that I would say, like, hey, just go slow.
Yeah. I personally feel like hitting a pen is like a once every like little couple of hours, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's going through their own different thing, but you know, especially if you're new, that's like let me step out for a second, you know, come back in, you know, and then I'm like good for a while. Type of smoking. I also kind of feel like it's one of the best ways to go about it in a very casual sense, as in like your goal is to not like get high necessarily, But, you have, like, there's definitely a lot of things that happen, when you smoke THC and cannabis and stuff like that, but you don't necessarily, like, have to get high,
Right.
It can just be, like, a soothing,
Just
chill,
kind of
like,
vibe.
experience. Yeah, vibing. And I feel like cartridges are some of the easiest ways to go about that.
Yeah.
Is, like, I'm not trying to be a pothead, so
Right.
I'm gonna like be more invested in the pens because then people think that I'm like a nicotine smoker sometimes,
A little more discreet, right.
Yeah, it's a little bit more discreet, I can go about, like a chill day, like as a chill day without like deciding for myself, I'm going to get high.
Yeah.
With that being said, it's also kind of easy to get accidentally too fried
Absolutely.
on a pen. Way too easy.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like sometimes I can always tell when I've like accidentally gone a little bit too hard on a pen.
Yeah.
I feel like it burns a little bit more almost.
Yeah, there's almost, for me, it's almost like a tunnel vision, like a kind of a quick moment of like, I've gone too far.
Yeah.
Like I've made a mistake, right? And then I pulled one edible recommendation if somebody's like really jazzed on getting into edibles. There's a brand called Kiva that makes these little tins, and then they're 5 milligram little blueberries covered in chocolate. I love them.
Oh.
They're so delightful.
Oh.
I wrote the name down. The milk chocolate terabytes from Kiva. I think they're terrific, and they're 5 milligrams a piece. And if you've not consumed a lot of cannabis, if you're not a big edible person, 5 milligrams is like a pretty safe place to start.
Oh yeah.
You're not gonna, melt into the couch on a 5 milligram edible, most likely. So yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
I feel
right?
like I just want to snack on those regardless. Chocolate covered blueberries?
They're
Yes,
so
please.
tasty. They're so good.
Yes,
Did you know,
please.
well, I guess it's not actually blueberry, it's blueberry crunch. Do you know there's a weird conspiracy? Anything that's like got blueberries in it, whether it's like Pop-Tarts or like blueberry,
I've heard of
they're not
this.
real blueberries.
They're not real.
Yeah, it's like fake manufactured blueberries.
But they taste so good.
They're so good, man.
They taste so good. I love the Hostess like little blueberry like muffin things that come in the packages with like 3 or 4.
Yeah. Do you have anything about like cannabis cocktails or anything? That was at the bottom of the doc, and I have nothing to say for it.
Honestly, I haven't been like super on the forefront of like the cannabis like drinks and stuff like
Same.
that. But I will say, there's somebody that I know that has always like had them around. Every time I hang out with them, they're like, hey, I got weed seltzers or whatever.
Sure.
And we try them. They're not bad.
Huh.
They're not bad. I feel like, honestly, I feel like when I've drank them, I feel like, if anything, it's like it makes me feel the same way that CBD does.
Sure.
And not necessarily like taking an edible or anything. I feel like it's almost like... I feel like the high that it kind of gives you is almost like a LaCroix in like the flavor. It's like you can feel the high like tingling back there, but it's definitely not like doing an edible, definitely not like smoking flower or even like cartridges and stuff like that. But I also know that like weed infused, cannabis infused like drinks and stuff like that are like fairly new. So
Yeah.
I am pretty excited to see like where it goes. I don't think it's really there yet. I feel like people are like trying to make like weed beverages like White Claws.
Yeah.
Versus like, if anything, I want something closer to like a Coca-Cola. Something that I can just like drink like a soda and not like a cocktail, or be like, here we go, I'm opening up a beverage. Yeah, but not too much. Not too much. Just definitely just like, here's a THC beverage and just tried it. But
yeah. Same. I had one liquid edible one time.
Yeah.
It was a terrible experience. I hated it.
it tastes bad.
It tastes bad, and it hits you hard, and I just wasn't ready, and I just didn't like it. And I'm not much of a drinker, so I don't have much for the cannabis cocktails. I'm gonna do a transition because I kind of came into this weird. hey, what do you think about the like cannabis cocktails and things going on like that? If you want to edit that in, you'd be my guest, man. The last thing that I have on my list to talk about today is a simple, easy recipe. If you are, maybe you've been smoking for a little while, maybe you're ready to take that next step, you want to try making your own edibles, I've got a step-by-step guide for you on how to do that. Have you ever made firecrackers before?
I actually have really only like maybe once made edibles, and it was kind of like a big project that me and a friends of mine have. So I don't really have too much experience like making edibles at all. It's pretty much like somebody else buys them or, you know, has them around and then I'll just like take one, you know, or whatever. So yeah, I don't have like any kind of recipes or stuff like that. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let me teach you how to make a very easy edible at home.
Perfect.
If you've got some flour, you need two other things. You need a cracker of your choice. I like crackers of graham crackers, sometimes also saltine. And then you need a spread, preferably like a high fatty one, like an organic peanut butter. One of those peanut butters that like when you buy it at the store, the oil's on top and the butter's below.
You gotta kind of like mix
it up. Yeah, you want that like high fatty, oily makeup to help your body absorb THC. That's really the key.
You're binding the THC to the oils.
Exactly.
So then you're,
Yeah, you need those fat. You did chemistry. You need the fat to do the thing. I was a communications major. So
I didn't major in chemistry. This is just a chemistry class. I was a film major.
Close enough. So you've got your cracker, you've got your peanut butter, you've got your weed. Step one, you've got to go through a process called decarboxylation. Do you know what that is?
I'm gonna take from contest clues and say that it's a way of I know that in the bud that you get, like when you have flower, is not just THC. It's THC something, and you need a way to release the two other compounds in there to then get the THC that gets you high. And I'm gonna assume that is that process.
Yeah, you nailed it. That was really good, man. Yeah, so THCA is what naturally exists in cannabis flower. THC is what the body consumes that gives you the high. Right. So what you need to do is you need to turn the THCA in your cannabis into THC. And the way to do that is to bake it. When you're smoking flower, joint, glass, bong, vape, you're adding a heat element, and that's doing that process when you are consuming. But if you're cooking with cannabis, you got to do that manually. So the way to do that is to grind up your weed, put it on a baking sheet, and put it in the oven. And I'll tell you this, it's going to make your oven and your whole kitchen smell like weed. So be prepared for that. Or go to Goodwill and get yourself a $2 toaster oven and use that to decarb your weed. That's a pro tip for you out there. So the easiest way to remember is you gotta do 30 at 230. So you set your oven to 230, you grind up your weed, you put it in there for 30 minutes, and then you take it out. You do 30 at 230. And then you've decarbed your weed, and at this point, you've got some kind of brownish flour that you can just munch on. And it's gonna taste like weed, but it'll get you high. We don't really want it to just taste like weed. It's kind of weird to just like eat. It's like, that would literally be like picking up a scoop of oregano and just putting it on your tongue. It'd be weird. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take that cracker and we're gonna slather some fatty peanut butter on there. And then you can like do a little Salt Bae and like sprinkle it on there. Or pro tip, you slather the peanut butter on there and then you just like flop it on there and it comes up with the weed on it. And then you got a firecracker. That's it. Those are the only steps. You just go from there.
Oh, you don't even need to like mix the carbonated flour in with the peanut butter?
You don't. You can, but you don't need to.
Oh.
Yeah, you can just go to town.
That is super easy.
Yeah, there you go. So that's your easy lesson of the day. If If you've ever wanted to have an easy way to eat your cannabis, you make a firecracker. And
That's awesome. That is super easy.
Yeah. It's super easy, and it's really also easy to, as with all edibles, do a little too much too fast. So go easy. It's just crackers and peanut butter. You can make as many as you want, but take it slow. Don't put all of your cannabis on one s'more.
Yeah, 30, and you said 30 minutes on the dentist time,
yes,
right?
30 minutes at dentist time.
Yeah.
Yeah. All dentists, big fan of decarboxylated weed. Don't fact check that. Well, that is everything that I have for this episode of The Green Room. Let me try that one more time. Hey, that's all I have for this episode of The Green Room. Bjorn, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, it was great. It was great being here, talking about all the different kinds of cannabis, sharing my weed stories.
Yeah.
All that good stuff.
I feel like this is normally where I feel like I would say, like, hey, do you have anything to pitch? So do you have anything to pitch?
Man, I had a thought, but I can't remember it now. So I guess no.
What an on-brand way for us to end a stoner podcast.
We forget.
We forget sometimes. And that's okay.
And, we'll probably remember later.
Yeah, if it's important, it'll come back.
Texting it in.
All right, well, that is going to do us. Jesus. That is going to do it for us here on The Green Room. One more time.
Oh, boy. You got it. You're doing great.
Hey, so that's going to do it for us here on The Green Room. Follow 614 Media on social media. Come back and check us out on The Green Room next time. And remember, it is 61420 somewhere.